The clock on the wall showed 8:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Most offices in the building had gone dark hours ago, but the lights on the 40th floor still blazed bright. David sat behind his massive desk, staring at his computer screen without really seeing the numbers anymore. The spreadsheet had stopped making sense 20 minutes ago, but he kept his eyes on it anyway. What else was there to do? Outside his window, the city looked like someone had scattered diamonds across black velvet. Thousands of tiny lights twinkled in the distance. Somewhere down there, families were gathering around dinner tables. Kids were probably sneaking downstairs to shake presents under Christmas trees. Couples were curled up on couches watching old holiday movies. But up here, in this corner office with its leather chairs and expensive art, there was only silence. David was 52 years old. He'd spent the last 30 years building his software company from nothing. Started in a garage with 2 credit cards maxed out and a dream that seemed crazy to everyone who knew him. Now he had offices in 12 countries. His company's stock price was something people talked about on financial news channels. He'd made more money than he'd ever imagined possible. But tonight, sitting alone in his office on Christmas Eve, he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt truly happy. His phone buzzed. Another email. He glanced at it without much interest. Someone from the Tokyo office had a question about a contract. It could wait until after the holidays, but David opened his laptop anyway and started typing a response. Work was easier than thinking. The office felt different when it was empty like this. During the day, it hummed with energy. People rushing between meetings, phones ringing, the coffee machine gurgling in the break room. But after everyone left, the silence pressed in from all sides. The heating system made strange clicking sounds. His own breathing seemed too loud. He thought about his daughter, Sophie. She was 16 now, living with her mother in Boston. They'd moved there 3 years ago, right after the divorce. He tried to remember the last real conversation he'd had with her. Not the awkward phone calls where she gave one-word answers while probably scrolling through her phone. A real conversation, where they actually talked about things that mattered. Nothing came to mind. The divorce hadn't been anyone's fault, really. At least that's what the therapist had said during their one and only session. His ex-wife, Patricia, had just gotten tired of being married to someone who was never home. Tired of attending school plays alone. Tired of explaining to Sophie why Daddy missed another birthday party. Tired of sleeping next to someone who was physically present but mentally still at the office. David had promised to change. He'd meant it too. But old habits die hard and building a company requires sacrifice. At least that's what he told himself. Patricia had stopped believing his promises after a while. He couldn't blame her. The door opened, making him jump. Maria, the cleaning lady, pushed her cart into the office. She was a small woman, probably in her 60s, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a bun. "Mr. David, you still here?" She shook her head like she'd caught him doing something wrong. "It's Christmas Eve. You should be home with family." "Just finishing up some work," he said, giving her the same excuse he always did. Maria had been cleaning his office for almost 8 years. She knew his habits better than most people in his life. She'd seen him sleep on the couch during product launches. She'd found him staring out the window at 3 in the morning more times than he could count. She never judged, but her eyes held a sadness that made him uncomfortable. "You know what my granddaughter said today?" Maria started dusting his bookshelf, talking while she worked. She said, "Abuela, do you think Santa knows we moved to the new apartment? So worried he won't find her?" She laughed, a warm sound that filled the empty office. "Kids, they believe in such beautiful things." David smiled, but it felt forced. He tried to remember being that age, believing in magic and Santa Claus. It seemed like a lifetime ago. A different person entirely. "How old is she now?" he asked, more to be polite than out of real curiosity. 7. Smart as a whip, that one. Asks more questions than a detective. Maria's face lit up when she talked about her granddaughter. "She's already written 3 letters to Santa. 3. Each one asking for different things. Last one just asked for her mama to be happy. That girl, she has such a good heart." Something twisted in David's chest. He remembered Sophie at that age. She used to draw him pictures and leave them on his desk. Crayon drawings of their family holding hands under a smiling sun. He wondered what had happened to all those drawings. Probably packed away in a box somewhere, or thrown out during one of the moves. "You have plans tomorrow?" Maria asked, emptying his trash can. "Oh, probably catch up on some reading. Maybe watch some football. The lie came easily. He'd probably spend the day exactly like this one in front of his computer, pretending to work while the hours crawled by. Maria paused and looked at him. Really looked at him. "Mr. David, can I tell you something? As someone who's been on this earth a little longer than you?" He nodded, curious despite himself. Money is good. Success is good. But at the end of the day, when you're lying in bed at night, it's the people you love who matter, not the numbers in your bank account. Not the size of your office, she gestured around the room. My husband, God rest his soul, he was a bus driver. We never had much. But every night he came home and we had dinner together. Every single night for 43 years. I'd give every penny I have to have one more dinner with him. David didn't know what to say. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with truth he wasn't ready to face. "I'm sorry," he finally managed. "I didn't know you'd lost your husband. 2 years now. But I have my family. My daughter, my granddaughter, my son-in-law. They keep me going." She finished emptying the trash and moved toward the door with her cart. "You should call your daughter. Don't wait until it's too late to be part of her life." After she left, the office felt even emptier than before. David picked up his phone and stared at Sophie's contact information. His thumb hovered over the call button. But what would he say? Sorry for missing the last 3 months of your life. Sorry for choosing spreadsheets over soccer games? He put the phone down. The Chinese restaurant on the corner delivered his usual order at 9:30. Kung Pao chicken, fried rice, and spring rolls. The same thing he ordered every time. He ate mechanically, tasting nothing, while his computer screen glowed in the darkness. Outside, snow had started to fall, tiny white flakes dancing past his window. Somewhere in the building, the heating system clanged and groaned. A siren wailed in the distance. The city kept moving, kept breathing, kept living. But up here in his corner office, time seemed to stand still. David finished his food and threw the containers in the trash. He should go home. There was nothing left to do here. But the thought of his empty penthouse apartment with its modern furniture and pristine white walls felt even lonelier than the office. So he stayed, staring at his computer, watching the snow fall, wondering how he'd built such a successful life that felt so completely empty. Wondering if Maria was right, if he was letting the important things slip away while he chased numbers on a screen. The clock ticked toward midnight. Outside, church bells started to ring, welcoming Christmas Day. David sat alone in his office, surrounded by everything he'd worked for, and felt absolutely nothing. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to change. Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest transformations. Sometimes a simple question from an unexpected person can crack open a heart that's been locked away for years. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight he was just a lonely man in an empty office, trying to remember what it felt like to belong somewhere. David finally left the office at midnight. The building's night security guard, Tom, looked surprised to see him. "Merry Christmas, Mr. David," Tom said, touching his cap. "Didn't think anyone was still up there." "Merry Christmas, Tom. You should be home with your family," Tom chuckled. "Drawing the short straw on Christmas Eve is part of the job. But my shift ends in an hour, and then I'll be home to see my kids open their presents. You heading home now?" David nodded and stepped out into the cold. The snow had picked up, covering the sidewalks in a thin white blanket. His breath came out in small clouds. The streets were mostly empty, just a few taxis cruising past and the occasional person hurrying home from a late shift. He started walking toward his apartment building, about 15 blocks away. He could have called his driver, but the cold air felt good after hours in the stuffy office. Besides, what was the rush? His apartment would be just as empty in 15 minutes as it was now. About halfway home, David realized he'd taken a wrong turn somewhere. The buildings here were different, smaller, older. This wasn't his usual route through the financial district with its glass towers and expensive restaurants. This was a residential neighborhood, the kind of place where real people lived real lives. Small houses lined the street, most of them decorated with Christmas lights. Some were elaborate, with inflatable Santas and reindeer on the lawns. Others were simple, just a string of colored lights around the door. But almost every house was lit up in some way, glowing warm against the snowy night. David slowed down, taking it in. When was the last time he'd actually noticed Christmas decorations? Really stopped and looked at them? He couldn't remember. He passed a house where a young couple was visible through the window, sitting on their couch with a baby. The man was holding the infant, bouncing gently while the woman laughed at something. The scene was so perfectly ordinary, so completely normal, that it made David's chest hurt. He kept walking, his expensive shoes crunching through the snow. His coat probably cost more than some of these families spent on rent. The thought made him uncomfortable. At the end of the block, he noticed a small house with a modest display of lights. Nothing fancy, just white lights strung along the porch railing and around the door. But something was clearly wrong. Half the lights were dark, and a man was standing on a ladder, trying to fix them while his breath fogged in the cold air. "Dad, just leave it," a woman's voice called from the doorway. "It's late and it's freezing out here." "Almost got it," the man said, fumbling with the strand of lights. He looked to be in his 70s, wearing a thin jacket that wasn't nearly warm enough for the weather. A little girl appeared in the doorway next to the woman. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, wearing pajamas with cartoon characters on them and fuzzy slippers. "Grampy, Mama's right. Come inside. We don't need the lights." "We do on Christmas," the old man insisted. "Your grandmother loved Christmas lights. We had them every year." The woman, probably the girl's mother, wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. "Dad, please. It's not worth you catching pneumonia." David found himself stopping on the sidewalk, watching this little drama unfold. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the earnestness of the old man, trying to keep a tradition alive. Maybe it was the way the little girl looked worried, her small face scrunched up with concern. The old man tugged on the light strand, and suddenly the ladder wobbled. The woman screamed. David started forward without thinking, but the man caught himself gripping the porch railing. "That's it. I'm not asking anymore," the woman said firmly. "You're coming inside right now, Dad." The old man climbed down slowly, defeated. "I just wanted it to be nice, like it used to be." "It is nice, Grampy," the little girl said, taking his hand. "The lights we have are beautiful." That's when she noticed David standing on the sidewalk watching them. Her eyes went wide. "Mama, there's a man." All 3 of them turned to look at him. David suddenly felt like an intruder. What was he doing standing outside their house like some kind of creep? "I'm sorry," he said quickly, raising his hands. "I didn't mean to scare anyone. I was just walking by and I saw you having trouble with the lights. I wanted to make sure everyone was okay." The woman stepped protectively in front of her daughter. "We're fine, thank you." She started to usher everyone inside, but the little girl ducked around her mother and came down the porch steps. Before anyone could stop her, she walked right up to David. "Are you lost?" she asked, studying him with the direct gaze that only children have. "You look lost. I guess I took a wrong turn," David admitted. "Where do you live?" "About 10 blocks that way." He pointed vaguely in the direction he thought was correct. "That's far. And it's snowing." The little girl tilted her head, her expression serious. "You must be cold. I'm okay. I have a warm coat." She looked him up and down, taking in his expensive clothes, his polished shoes now covered in snow. "You're all dressed up. Were you at a party?" "No, I was working." "On Christmas Eve?" Her eyes went even wider. "That's sad." Her mother came down the steps. "I'm so sorry." She doesn't understand boundaries yet. She put her hands on the girl's shoulders. "Come on, sweetheart. Let the man go home." "Wait," the little girl said. She looked up at David again, and her expression changed to something that looked like sadness. "Are you all alone?" The question hit David harder than it should have. It was such a simple question, asked with such innocent concern, but it seemed to see right through all his defenses. Yes. I suppose I am." "That's really sad." The little girl's eyes actually welled up with tears. "Nobody should be alone on Christmas." "It's okay," David said quickly. "I'm used to it." "But it's Christmas," she insisted, as if this explained everything. As if being alone was unacceptable any other day, but completely unthinkable on Christmas. Her mother looked embarrassed. "I'm so sorry." She's very sensitive about these things. Her father passed away 2 years ago, and she's been very aware of people who seem lonely ever since. "I'm sorry for your loss," David said automatically, the words he'd been trained to say in business situations when someone shared difficult news. The little girl was still staring at him. Then suddenly her face brightened with an idea. "Mama, can he come for Christmas dinner?" "What?" The woman looked shocked. "Sweetie, no. This is a stranger. We don't even know his name." "But he's alone," the girl said, as if this was the only fact that mattered. "And we have food. We always make too much food. You said so yourself. That's very kind, David said, but I couldn't possibly. Why not? The little girl wasn't giving up. Do you have other plans? Well, no, but then why can't you come? It's just dinner. We have turkey and mashed potatoes and green beans and pie. Mama makes really good pie. And Grampy tells funny stories. And Mr. Henderson from next door is coming because his kids are in Florida, and he can't travel anymore because of his hip. Her mother sighed. Lily, you can't just invite random people to Christmas dinner. Why not? You invited Mr. Henderson. That's different. We've known Mr. Henderson for years. But you didn't know him before you knew him, Lily pointed out with perfect kid logic. And now you do. So if we get to know this man, then it won't be different anymore. Despite everything, David found himself smiling. The kid had a point. What's your name? Lily asked him directly. David. See? Now we know him. His name is David. She turned to her mother triumphantly. The woman rubbed her face with her hands. She looked tired. David noticed details he'd missed before. Her coat was worn at the cuffs. The house behind them was well kept but clearly old, in need of repairs. The Christmas lights that did work looked like they'd been used for many years. Look, David said. I appreciate the kindness, but I really shouldn't impose. You've already got your own plans, and do you want to come? Lily asked him directly. If we said you could come, would you want to? The question stopped him cold. Did he want to? Spend Christmas with complete strangers in their small house eating dinner with people he'd never met? It was absurd. He had a perfectly good apartment with a fully stocked kitchen. He could order food from any restaurant in the city. He didn't need charity from people who clearly had less than he did. But as he stood there, looking at this little girl in her pajamas and fuzzy slippers, standing in the snow asking him if he wanted to have Christmas dinner with her family, he realized something. Yes, he did want to, more than he'd wanted anything in a long time. I would, he heard himself say. If you're sure it's okay. Lily beamed. She turned to her mother with pleading eyes. Mama, please? It's Christmas. The woman looked at David for a long moment. He could see her weighing the situation. Stranger danger versus her daughter's kind heart versus the fact that it was Christmas, and the man was clearly alone. Her face was exhausted but kind, lined with the stress of probably working too hard and sleeping too little. Finally, she sighed. Dinner is at 5 tomorrow, 247 Maple Street. This street, third house from the corner. Are you sure? David asked. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, Lily said firmly. You're our guest. And you'll make my daughter happy, the woman added, which is worth more than you probably realize. David felt something loosen in his chest, something he hadn't even known was tight. Thank you. I'll be here. Bring whatever you want to drink, the woman said. We'll have food covered. Lily was practically bouncing. This is going to be the best Christmas ever. Her mother laughed, but it was a warm sound. Come on, troublemaker. Let's get you inside before you freeze. See you tomorrow, David, Lily called as her mother guided her back toward the house. See you tomorrow. The old man who'd been watching all this from the porch caught David's eye and gave him a small nod. Not unfriendly, but measuring. Wondering what kind of man his daughter had just invited into their home. David nodded back, understanding completely. If some stranger showed up on his daughter's doorstep, he'd be protective too. He watched them go inside, the door closing against the cold. The partially working Christmas lights glowed in the window. The house looked warm and lived in and full of love even from the outside. David stood there for a moment, letting snow collect on his shoulders. What had he just agreed to? Christmas dinner with complete strangers? It was crazy. It went against everything he'd been taught about maintaining professional boundaries, keeping his personal life private, not getting involved with people who might want something from him. But as he finally turned and started walking again, trying to find his way back to familiar streets, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt curious. He felt interested in something that wasn't work or money or building his company. He felt for the first time in forever, like something unexpected might happen tomorrow. Something good. He looked back once at the little house with its modest lights. A little girl named Lily had seen a lonely man on Christmas Eve and decided he shouldn't be alone. Simple as that. No ulterior motive, no expectation of something in return. Just pure, uncomplicated kindness. David pulled out his phone and made a note of the address. 247 Maple Street, 5 o'clock. He wasn't going to miss this. For the first time in 3 years, he was actually looking forward to Christmas. David stood in the wine section of the upscale market on Christmas morning, staring at bottles that cost more than some people's car payments. He'd already picked up 3 different bottles and put them back. Everything felt wrong. Too expensive. Too showy. Too much like he was trying to prove something. The store was nearly empty. Just a few last-minute shoppers grabbing forgotten items. A woman with a cart full of emergency supplies rushed past him. A teenage boy stood in front of the ice cream freezer like it held the answers to life's mysteries. Finally, David grabbed a bottle of wine that was nice but not ridiculous. Then he added a second one, and some sparkling cider, in case the little girl wanted to feel included in a toast. He wandered through the store adding things to his basket. Nice crackers, fancy cheese, a box of expensive chocolates, a bouquet of flowers for the mother whose name he'd never gotten. At the checkout, the elderly cashier smiled at him. Someone's having a party. Actually, I'm going to one. I'm a guest. How nice. Nothing better than spending the holidays with people you care about. David didn't correct her. He paid and walked back to his apartment, the shopping bags weighing down his arms. Inside his penthouse, everything was exactly as he'd left it. Clean, organized, empty. The maid service came twice a week, so there wasn't even the comfortable mess of actually living somewhere. Just perfect surfaces and carefully arranged furniture. He set the wine in his temperature-controlled wine fridge. Put the cheese and chocolates in the kitchen. Arranged the flowers in a vase he wasn't even sure he owned until he found it in a cabinet. Then he stood in his living room looking around and realized he had no idea what to do with the next 6 hours until dinner. This was his life. Lots of time. Lots of money. Nothing to fill either one with. He took a shower, standing under the hot water for a long time. Changed into casual clothes. Not too casual. He didn't want to look like he was trying too hard, but he also didn't want to show up looking like he'd just rolled out of bed. He settled on dark jeans and a nice sweater, looked at himself in the mirror and wondered if this was appropriate for a dinner at a stranger's house. At 3 o'clock, unable to stand the waiting anymore, he left his apartment. Walked around the city for a while, watching families through restaurant windows, kids playing in the park with their new Christmas toys. The city felt different on Christmas Day, quieter, gentler, like everyone had agreed to slow down for just one day. He stopped at a toy store that was somehow still open, found himself wandering the aisles looking at dolls and building sets and board games, finally picked out a stuffed rabbit. It was soft and white with floppy ears and a pink nose, the kind of toy that looked huggable. He had no idea if Lily would like it, but it felt right. By 4:30, he couldn't wait anymore. He headed toward Maple Street, arriving 15 minutes early. Stood on the corner, feeling ridiculous with his bags of wine and cheese and flowers and the stuffed rabbit. He probably looked like he was trying to buy his way into their good graces. Maybe he was, but Lily had invited him. She'd wanted him there. That had to count for something. At exactly 5 o'clock, he walked up to the door of 247 Maple Street and knocked. His heart was pounding harder than it did before major business presentations. This was stupid. He was a CEO. He'd negotiated million-dollar deals. He'd given speeches to thousands of people. Why was he nervous about dinner with a family he'd met once on the street? The door opened. Lily stood there wearing a red dress that looked like it might be new. Her hair was pulled back with a sparkly clip. "You came." She looked genuinely delighted, like she'd been worried he might not show up. "I told Mama you'd come, but she said maybe you changed your mind." "I wouldn't miss it," David said, and realized he meant it. Lily grabbed his hand and pulled him inside. The house was small but warm. The living room had worn furniture that looked comfortable, the kind you could actually sit on without worrying about messing it up. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with a mix of ornaments that clearly spanned decades. Some looked handmade, probably by children. Others were old glass ones that had probably been passed down through generations. Lily's mother appeared from what must have been the kitchen. She'd changed into a nice dress, too, though David could see where it had been mended at the hem. Her hair was pulled back and she looked tired but welcoming. "You actually came," she said, echoing her daughter's surprise. "I'm Rachel, by the way. We never actually introduced ourselves properly last night. David, and thank you for having me. I brought a few things." He held out the bags, suddenly feeling self-conscious about how much he'd brought. Rachel's eyes widened when she saw the wine bottles. "Oh, that's really not necessary." "You didn't have to." I wanted to, David said quickly. Please, let me contribute something. Lily was already digging through the bags.
Flowers!
Mama, look how pretty. Then she found the wrapped package. What's this? That's for you, David said. If it's okay with your mom. Lily looked at Rachel with pleading eyes. Can I open it now, please? Rachel looked like she wanted to object, but she nodded. Go ahead. Lily tore into the wrapping paper with the enthusiasm only a kid can muster. When she pulled out the stuffed rabbit, her whole face lit up. He's so soft. Mama, feel how soft. He's beautiful, Rachel said. But she was looking at David with an expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude mixed with something else. Maybe discomfort. Maybe worry about what obligations came with gifts from wealthy strangers. It's just a rabbit, David said. No strings attached. I'm going to name him Snowball, Lily announced, because David found us in the snow last night. Come on, you have to meet Grampy and Mr. Henderson. She grabbed David's hand again and dragged him toward the kitchen. The house smelled amazing. Turkey and something sweet, probably the pie Lily had mentioned. David's stomach rumbled, reminding him he hadn't eaten all day. The kitchen was tiny but spotless. The old man from last night was at the stove, stirring something in a pot. He turned when they entered, and David saw the resemblance to Rachel. Same eyes, same careful way of moving. Grampy, this is David, the man from last night. I remember, the old man said. He wiped his hand on a towel and extended it. Robert, Rachel's father. David shook his hand. Robert's grip was firm, and his eyes were sharp, measuring, wondering what kind of man his daughter had let into their home. Thank you for letting me join you, David said. Wasn't my call, Robert said bluntly, but anyone my granddaughter likes can't be all bad. An elderly man sat at the kitchen table, wearing a cardigan and a gentle smile. He stood up with some difficulty, leaning on a cane. And I'm Walter Henderson, live next door. Known this family since they moved in 5 years ago. David, I work in the city. What do you do? Walter asked. I run a software company. Walter nodded like this explained everything. Explains the fancy wine. Rachel showed me. That's real nice of you. David felt himself relaxing slightly. These were good people. Normal people. They weren't going to judge him for having money or ask him for anything. They just invited him to dinner because a little girl thought no one should be alone on Christmas. All right, everyone out of my kitchen, Rachel said, shooing them toward the dining room. Dinner's almost ready. The dining room was barely big enough for the table, which was set with mismatched plates and cloth napkins that looked hand-stitched. A candle centerpiece sat in the middle, the kind you could buy at any grocery store, but it looked beautiful anyway. Everything was humble but clean, cared for but clearly well used. David took the seat Lily pointed him to. She sat next to him, still clutching her new rabbit. Robert sat at the head of the table with Walter on the other side. Rachel brought out dishes one by one. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, homemade rolls that were slightly lopsided but smelled incredible. It was nothing like the fancy Christmas dinners David remembered from his marriage. Those had been catered affairs with matching china and professional service. Everything perfect and formal and somehow completely joyless. This was real. Imperfect. The table was a little wobbly. One of the chairs creaked when you sat on it. The gravy had lumps in it, but it felt more like a holiday meal than anything David had experienced in years. Should we say grace? Robert asked. Everyone bowed their heads. David did too. Not sure when he'd last prayed about anything. Dear Lord, Robert began, we thank you for this food, for this family, and for bringing us together on this special day. We're grateful for what we have, and we remember those who aren't with us anymore. His voice caught slightly. We ask that you watch over us and guide us. And we welcome David to our table and hope he feels the warmth of family tonight. Amen. Amen, everyone echoed. David felt a lump in his throat. It had been so long since anyone had included him in something like this, since anyone had wanted him somewhere just because of who he was, not because of what he could do for them. All right, dig in before it gets cold, Rachel said. And the table came alive with the passing of dishes and the clatter of silverware. Lily chattered constantly, telling David about school and her friends and the book she was reading. She asked him questions too. Did he have kids? What was his favorite food? Had he ever seen a real reindeer? Her questions bounced from topic to topic with no logical connection. And somehow it was perfect. Walter told a story about Christmas when he was a boy, when his father brought home a live turkey and it escaped in the house. Everyone laughed, even Robert, whose stern expression softened when he smiled. Rachel mostly just watched, making sure everyone had enough food, refilling glasses, but David caught her smiling too. She looked younger when she smiled, less tired. "So David," Robert said eventually, "what brings a successful man like you to our neighborhood on Christmas Eve?" "Dad," Rachel said, a warning in her voice. "It's okay," David said. He put down his fork. "Honest answer? I was walking home from work and got lost. Ended up on your street. Saw you having trouble with the lights. And you just stopped to help strangers." Robert's tone was skeptical. More like I stopped to make sure everyone was safe. "I saw the ladder wobble. Grampy almost fell," Lily said seriously. "It was scary." "I was fine," Robert grumbled. "But why were you working on Christmas Eve?" Walter asked. "Don't you have family to spend the holidays with?" The table went quiet. David could feel everyone watching him, waiting for his answer. "No," he said finally. "My ex-wife and daughter live in Boston. We don't talk much anymore. And my parents passed away years ago. No siblings. So it's pretty much just me." "That's sad," Lily said, like she had the night before. "Lily, don't be rude," Rachel said softly. "But it is sad," Lily insisted. "Everyone should have family for Christmas. Some people build their own family," Walter said gently. "It doesn't have to be blood relatives. It can be people you choose." "Is that why you're here?" Lily asked Walter. "Because we're your chosen family?" Walter's eyes got a little watery. "That's exactly right, kiddo." "Then David can be our chosen family too," Lily decided. "Right, Mama?" Rachel looked uncomfortable. "Sweetheart, David has his own life. We can't just adopt him. Why not?" Lily asked. "He's alone. We have room at the table. Seems pretty simple to me." David found himself laughing. Really laughing for the first time in months. "Your daughter has a gift for cutting through complications. She gets it from her father," Rachel said quietly. "He never understood why people made things harder than they needed to be." "Tell me about him," David said. "If that's okay." Rachel looked surprised. "You really want to know?" "I do," so she told him. About meeting her husband in college. About him being a firefighter. About how he'd died saving a family from a burning building. Going back in one last time when the roof collapsed. About how Lily had been only 5 and didn't really understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. "He was a hero," Lily said proudly. "Everyone says so." "He was," David agreed. "The best kind." They sat around the table for hours. Long after the food was gone, they stayed, talking and laughing. Robert told stories about his wife, who'd passed the year before. Walter shared memories of his own children, grown now and living far away. Rachel talked about her job as a nurse at the local hospital, the long shifts and difficult patients, but also the moments when she got to help someone heal. And David surprised himself by opening up too. He talked about building his company, about the divorce, about his daughter Sophie and how he'd let work become more important than being a father, about realizing on Christmas Eve that he'd built a perfect life on paper that felt empty in reality. No one judged him. No one offered platitudes or easy answers. They just listened. And somehow that was exactly what he needed. When Rachel brought out the pie, it was perfect. Flaky crust, sweet apple filling, served with vanilla ice cream that was melting before they could eat it. David ate 2 slices and didn't care about calories or health or any of the things he usually worried about. "This is the best Christmas I've had in years," he said, and meant it completely. "Me too," Lily said, hugging her rabbit. "Because you're here." David looked around the table, at this family that had taken in a stranger, just because a little girl thought no one should be alone, at the mismatched plates and the wobbly table and the hand-me-down decorations, at the realness of it all, and he felt something shift inside him, something that had been frozen for a long time, starting to thaw. David left the house around 9 that night, carrying a container of leftovers that Rachel had insisted he take. Lily had walked him to the door, still holding the stuffed rabbit he'd given her. "Will you come visit us again?" she asked, looking up at him with those serious eyes. "If your mother says it's okay," David said carefully. "Mama," Lily called back into the house. "Can David come visit us again?" Rachel appeared, drying her hands on a dish towel. She looked at David, then at her daughter, and something in her expression softened. We'd like that. Then it's settled, Lily said, satisfied. You can come for dinner next week, David laughed. I'll call first, okay? Your mom might be busy. He walked back to his apartment through the quiet streets, but this time he didn't feel lost. The leftovers felt heavy in his hands, warm against his chest. When he got home, his penthouse felt different somehow. Still empty, but not as lonely, like he'd brought some of that warmth back with him. He put the leftovers in his fridge and sat on his couch, looking out at the city lights. His phone was on the coffee table. He'd been avoiding it all evening, and now he saw 3 missed calls. All from the same number, Patricia, his ex-wife. His finger hovered over the callback button. It was late in Boston, but she'd called 3 times. That wasn't like her, he dialed. She picked up on the first ring. David? Thank God, I've been trying to reach you. What's wrong? Is Sophie okay? She's fine, physically. But David, we need to talk about her. He felt his stomach drop. What happened? She's been getting into trouble at school. Acting out. Her grades are slipping. And today, on Christmas, she locked herself in her room and won't come out. She won't talk to me. Patricia's voice cracked. I don't know what to do anymore. David closed his eyes. What does she say when you ask what's wrong? She says everything's fine. But it's not fine. And I think, Patricia hesitated, I think part of it is you, me. David, you haven't called her in 3 months. You missed her birthday. You sent a card and money, but you didn't call. She pretends she doesn't care, but she does. She cares a lot. The words hit him like physical blows. He'd been so wrapped up in his own loneliness that he hadn't thought about how his absence might be affecting Sophie. He'd told himself she was busy with her own life, that she probably didn't want to hear from him anyway, that he was giving her space. He'd been lying to himself. Put her on the phone, he said. She won't talk to me. Why would she talk to you? Patricia, please. Just try. He heard Patricia walking, heard her knock on a door. Sophie, your father's on the phone. He wants to talk to you. Silence. Then please, honey. Just for a minute, more silence. David held his breath. Then finally a different voice. Young, defensive, hurt. What? Hey, Sophie. Merry Christmas. Yeah, you too. Her voice was flat, emotionless. I know I haven't called in a while. I'm sorry. Whatever. You're busy. I get it. No, you don't get it. Because I don't get it either. David stood up, started pacing. I've been telling myself I was giving you space. That you were better off without me bothering you. But the truth is I was scared. Scared of what? Sophie sounded skeptical. Scared that you wouldn't want to talk to me. Scared that I'd already messed up so badly that there was no fixing it. Scared that you were happier without me in your life. That's stupid, Sophie said. And he heard the first crack in her defensive armor. You're my dad. I know. And I've been a terrible one. You're not terrible. You're just not here. David sat back down, his heart breaking. I know, and I'm sorry. I can't change the past 3 months or the last 3 years. But I want to change what happens next, if you'll let me. How? Sophie's voice was smaller now, younger. You live in New York, I live here. You have your company. I have school. It's not like we can just hang out. I could visit. Or you could come here. We could talk on the phone more. Video chat, whatever works for you, he paused. I know I don't have any right to ask for another chance, but I'm asking anyway. Silence stretched out. David waited, not pushing, just letting her process. Why now? Sophie finally asked. What changed? David thought about Lily, asking him if he was alone. About sitting around that dinner table with people who barely knew him but welcomed him anyway. About Robert's prayer including him in their family for one night. About realizing how much he'd been missing while he was busy building a company. I spent tonight with a family I just met, he said. And this little girl, she's about 7, she asked me why I was alone on Christmas. And I realized I've been alone for a long time, and it's not because I have to be. It's because I chose to be. Because it was easier than risking getting hurt or messing up again. He took a breath, but tonight showed me what I've been missing. And it made me think about you, and how much of your life I've missed, and I don't want to miss anymore.
He could hear Sophie breathing on the other end of the line.
When she spoke again, her voice was thick with tears. I miss you, Dad. I miss you too, kiddo. So much. Mom says I can't come visit until spring break. That's months away. Then I'll come there. Next weekend if you want. We could go to dinner. Or just hang out. Whatever you want to do. Really? You'd really come? I promise. And Sophie? I'm going to call you. At least once a week. Maybe more. If you get sick of me, you can tell me to back off. But I'm not disappearing again. He heard her crying now, not even trying to hide it. Okay. Yeah, okay, you can come visit. And you can call. She sniffled. But if you break this promise, I'm going to be really mad. If I break this promise, you have permission to be furious with me. I deserve it. They talked for another 20 minutes. Really talked. Not just the surface-level stuff they'd been doing for years. Sophie told him about school, about her friends, about a boy she liked but who didn't know she existed. David told her about his day, about meeting Lily and her family, about the Christmas dinner that had changed something in him. When they finally hung up, David felt exhausted, but lighter. Like he'd been carrying something heavy for so long that he'd forgotten it was there, and now he'd finally put it down. He called Patricia back. Thank you for reaching out, for making her talk to me. She needed to hear from you, Patricia said. We both knew it, but I didn't know how to make it happen. What changed your mind? A little girl who asked better questions than most adults I know. Patricia laughed softly. Well, thank her for me. Sophie's already in a better mood. She actually came out of her room and is helping me clean up from dinner. I'm coming to visit next weekend. If that's okay with you? Of course it is. David, despite everything, I never wanted you out of Sophie's life. I just couldn't live with being second to your company anymore. I know. You were right to leave. I just wish I'd figured this out sooner. Better late than never, Patricia said. Really. It's good that you're figuring it out now. After he hung up, David sat in his apartment for a long time thinking. He looked at his phone, at his laptop sitting on the desk in his home office. Tomorrow, the world would start up again. The stock market would open. Emails would flood in. Problems would need solving. But tonight, he'd taken a step toward fixing the biggest problem in his life. He'd reconnected with his daughter. Not perfectly, not completely, but it was a start. The next day, David went into the office, but he left at 5 instead of staying until midnight. He called Sophie on his way home just to say hi. She seemed surprised but pleased. The day after that, he did it again. By the end of the week, he'd established a routine. Work during the day but actually leave at a reasonable hour. Call Sophie every evening. She started opening up more, sharing details about her life that he'd been missing. On Saturday, he found himself walking back to Maple Street. He knocked on the door of number 247, holding a coffee for Rachel. He'd noticed during dinner that she drank it with 2 sugars and cream. Rachel opened the door, looking surprised. David, what are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood, he said, which was a complete lie since he'd walked 45 minutes to get there. I brought you coffee. Is that weird? That might be weird. Rachel laughed and took the coffee. It's a little weird, but also really nice. Come in. Lily appeared behind her mother, still in pajamas even though it was almost noon. David, you came back. Mom, I told you he'd come back. You didn't tell me he was coming today, Rachel pointed out. I didn't know it would be today. I just knew he'd come back. Lily grabbed David's hand. Want to see my room? I made a bed for Snowball. David looked at Rachel, who shrugged and smiled. Go ahead. Just warning you, it's a mess. She's 7. Lily's room was indeed a mess, but in the best way. Toys scattered across the floor, drawings taped to the walls, books piled on every surface. Snowball the rabbit had a place of honor on her pillow, surrounded by other stuffed animals. This is his family, Lily explained. And look, I made him a name tag. She'd tied a ribbon around the rabbit's neck with a paper tag that said Snowball in careful, crooked letters. It's perfect, David said. They spent the afternoon together. David helped Robert fix the Christmas lights properly. Played board games with Lily. Talked with Rachel while she made lunch. It felt natural, comfortable, like he'd been part of this family for years instead of days. As he was leaving, Rachel walked him to the door. You don't have to keep coming by, you know. We're not expecting anything from you. I know, David said. I want to. If that's okay, it's more than okay. Lily lights up when you're here. And honestly, it's nice having another adult around who isn't Mr. Henderson or my dad. She smiled. But David, can I ask you something? Anything. Why us? You could be anywhere doing anything. Why are you spending your free time with a family you barely know? David thought about it. Because you're real. Because being here feels like something that actually matters. Because your daughter saw a lonely man on the street and decided to do something about it. No questions asked. And because I've spent too long living a life that looks good on paper but feels empty, I don't want to do that anymore. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, just promise me something. If this ever becomes an obligation instead of something you want to do, tell me. I don't want Lily getting attached to someone who's going to disappear. I promise. And Rachel, I get it. You're protecting your daughter. That's what good parents do. He thought of Sophie, of all the times Patricia had tried to protect her from David's absences. I'm trying to learn how to be a better parent myself. The fact that you're trying means a lot, Rachel said. Over the next few weeks, David became a regular presence at 247 Maple Street. He'd stop by after work a couple times a week. Sometimes he'd bring dinner. Sometimes he'd just sit and help Lily with her homework. Sometimes he and Robert would watch football together, arguing good-naturedly about plays and calls. He also flew to Boston twice to see Sophie. The visits were awkward at first, but gradually they found their rhythm again. They went to her favorite restaurant, walked through the city, talked about real things instead of just surface pleasantries. On one visit, Sophie asked about Lily. So you're like, friends with a 7-year-old? Sort of. She kind of adopted me, I think, Sophie smiled. That's actually really cute, Dad. You needed adopting. Yeah, David admitted. I really did. On a cold day in late January, David was at the house helping Rachel fix a leaky faucet when Lily came running in from school waving a paper. David! Look, I got an A on my book report. That's amazing. He high-fived her. Which book? Charlotte's Web. It made me cry, but in a good way. The best books do that, David said. Lily hugged him suddenly, fiercely. I'm glad you're here. Me too, kiddo. Me too. That night, walking home, David realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this content. His company was still successful. He was still wealthy. But now his life had something it hadn't had in years. It had people in it. Real people who cared about him not because of what he could do for them, but just because of who he was. All because a little girl had asked him one simple question on a snowy Christmas Eve. Would you like to join us for dinner? 3 months after that first Christmas dinner, David sat in his office reviewing a document that would have seemed impossible just a few months earlier. It was a proposal to establish a foundation. Not just any foundation, but one focused on supporting single-parent families in need, scholarships for kids who'd lost parents, financial assistance for families struggling with medical bills or housing costs, programs to connect children with mentors who could be positive influences in their lives. The idea had started small, just a thought really, after watching Rachel work herself to exhaustion between her nursing job and raising Lily alone, after seeing how much Lily had gained from having another stable adult in her life who showed up consistently. But once David started researching, he couldn't stop. There were thousands of families like Rachel's. Millions, actually. Good people working hard, doing everything right, but barely keeping their heads above water because life had dealt them a difficult hand. He had the resources to help. So why wasn't he? His assistant, Jennifer, knocked on his door. Your 4 o'clock is here. Send them in. Rachel walked in looking nervous and out of place in her nurse's scrubs. She'd come straight from her shift at the hospital. David had asked her to stop by but hadn't told her why. Sorry, I know I look a mess, she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I didn't have time to change. You look fine. Sit, please. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Want some coffee? Water? I'm okay. David, what's this about? Your message sounded serious. He slid the proposal across the desk to her. I want you to read this and tell me what you think. Rachel picked it up, confused. Started reading. Her eyes widened as she went through page after page. David, this is... You're going to start a foundation? I'm thinking about it. But I wanted to run it by you first. You're the expert here. You're living this reality. I'm just a guy with money who wants to help. This is incredible. She kept reading, shaking her head in disbelief. The scholarship program. The emergency assistance fund. The mentorship program. This could change so many lives.